COVID sucks. Right off the bat, and before we get into it, no, I didn't have it. I was near someone who had it, and we were unaware of it until it came back positive for them. However, I was near the person that had it for a while, and in turn, I became sick as well. And for the next 2 weeks, I was out of it. Um, let's go back to 2020 when we were supposed to stay home, not go outside, and isolate ourselves for 2 weeks. Yeah, that happened again. I'm okay with it. I'm an introvert. I was totally okay with just staying inside playing mobile games and binging on TV shows and movies. But it wasn't all fun and games. Walk in the park either. I had fever dreams. I never had these before, so I didn't know. I kept telling my friends that we were all 30-year-olds and we were back in high school. For some reason, I was self aware of this, and I guess you could say I broke the fourth wall and told myself to wake up. That it's only a dream. It's only a dream. And it's only a dream. It's the only dream that I can remember. I'm sure there were more because I kept waking up every 2 hours and then going back to sleep and saying, holy shit, that was the weirdest dream ever. Um, but it happened. I'm feeling better now. And in doing so, I feel like I lost a whole month. So after feeling 90% better, yes, 95% better as of this episode. I still have a lingering cough and trying to get better, so hopefully by the time I'm done doing this episode and posting, I will feel 100% better. So let's start this episode the right way. Welcome. Welcome back to the celebratory 7,000 downloads episode. I'm Evo. This is your favorite podcast. This is from Under the Apron. Over the week, I hit 7,000 downloads, and shit, I'm still being listened to worldwide. Um, on the Let me double check that again. 7,072 downloads as of to this episode, as of this recording, and still the majority of them are women. So thank you for all of that. We celebrating every moment. And with that, I bring to you a new logo. I figured it was time to update the podcast logo into something simple instead of emojis of the face who runs the place. We are rapidly coming to our third year in January, and I want to get a new thing. Something new. New logo, maybe new merch, you know, possibly some new equipment, and maybe a new home for the podcast. It's time to think long term, and it's not always going to be this way. So if anybody has any ideas on what to do next, let me know. So thank you all for tuning right back into this broadcast. I have one more episode of Heels for season one, and then we move on to season two. But before I begin with that, let's go back to this past week in wrestling. I mentioned on Friday's episode about the 23 other talent that got released over the week. Well, I guess they can add one more to the mix, and I couldn't believe when they said his name. Uh, Here it is, guys. Matt freaking Riddle. Matt Riddle. First appearance was August 18th, 2018 at NXT Brooklyn. He is a one-time U.S. champion, two-time Raw Tag Team champion with Randy Orton, known as Bro KO. Bro. One-time NXT Tag Team champion with Pete Dunne. the Broserweights, as they were called, and they both won the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic in 2020. Soon after his call or release on September 22nd, he took to Twitter to say this quote: "Just wanted to inform everyone that I'm no longer with WWE. Thank you for the memories and opportunities. Also, thank you all to all the fans for the support and love you give me every time I go out to the ring. See you all soon."
Hey, welcome to the Sweet Life Pod, the show where we create special moments with special people. I'm your host, Sakari Masters. In the Sweet Life Pod, we'll be discussing individuality, peace of mind, and how to attain and uphold meaningful relationships. If this sounds fitting, then follow the Sweet Life Pod on Spotify now. Thank you.
Welcome back. I'm doing a Heel Season 1 recap. This is the 8th and final episode of the season. Is called Double Turn. In wrestling terminology, a double turn is a booking device used to make a good wrestler a bad guy and a bad wrestler a good guy at the same time while they are feuding. Wait to the end of the episode to hear what my favorite double turns were in the world of wrestling. This episode aired October 10th, 2021. Synopsis of the show: the culmination of all of Jack's efforts finally pays off as the DWL is featured on the biggest stage in its history. But when outside steering drama enters the square circle, there's a lot more on the line than the championship belt. Last episode of the season, directed by Pete Segal again, written by Eric Martin, who is now a writer for the Marvel Loki series and wrote for all 6 episodes of that series. Um, I love Loki, by the way. The show opens on young Jack practicing his swing in the backyard while Ace is watching his brother sitting on a stack of hay and asks if Jack likes him as a friend. Jack explains that they're brothers and that he loves him, which is better than liking him, as it means he has to be there for him when he's a pain in the ass. Ace asks Jack if he wants to go fishing later. They can use the new pole their dad gave to Ace. Jack says Dad didn't give him one. Ace says because it wasn't his birthday, but Jack says he had a birthday this year. We see that Ace is the favorite son. Ace grabs a hold of Jack's baseball glove and tells Jack. Ace grabs a hold of Jack's baseball glove and Jack tells Ace he didn't say he could touch that. Ace says Jack never said he couldn't. Jack grabs Ace and tells him not to touch what isn't his as he tries to play wrestle with him. When Tom knows that the boy's playing around, he tells Jack to wrestle him instead. Despite Jack clearly not wanting to, Jack tells Tom they were just goofing. Tom says, why don't Jack and him do some goofing? They lock up, and Tom throws him to the ground a couple times, but then Jack manages to knock Tom down, though only for a moment. Tom regains the upper hand and forces Jack to say that he quits. Ace knows how his dad can get, so he tries to get his dad to ease up, but Tom continues to mess around with Jack, proving a point to him, and that was Jack telling Ace not to touch what isn't his, so Jack should do the same and not touch what isn't his. Ace, that's Tom's son, and according to Tom, he didn't want Jack touching him. Tom applies the same arm lock hold that Jack applied to Ace in episode 1 to force Ace to quit, but Jack never said he quit. Instead, the scene changes to the end of last week's episode when Jack is in the FWD ring and staring out at his brother. We see someone throwing a beer bottle into the ring, but the focus is on the bottle. Then back to young Jack and Ace, and finally back at the bottle, almost hitting Jack as he backs away from it to hit. Jack flees the ring as Gully commands that someone get him. While headed to the back, Jack is tackled by Bob Wired, but Ace comes to his defense, and the two of them run to the parking lot and drive off in Jack's car after being attacked by security. Ace explains that he went after Gully with the intent of beating him up, but he was tempted with booze and drugs, and Gully tricked him. Jack says he would have been. Jack says he would have been an easy mark in the Garden of Eden. Easy to tempt, easy to sway. However, Gully did admittedly listen to Ace, which is more than he can say for Jack. He then said Ace could stop being a heel. Speaking of which, Jack reveals that Ace will be winning the belt next week as the beginning of his journey to turn him back into a face. They're going to turn Wild Bill into a monster heel, and Ace is going to climb the ladder and grab the belt in front of 10,000 screaming fans at the state fair. Jack claims to drove to Florida to protect his brother from a piece of shit who wants to chew him out and spit him out, which is also why he screwed him over back when Bill came scouting. He was protecting Ace from himself. He wasn't ready for the big time, and he didn't want to watch Ace drink himself to death in 6 months. But Ace tells him he should have watched Ric Flair's 30 for 30. He would have been fine. He still isn't convinced and then asks if Jack and Willie planted the Kleenex in the crowd that night, which Jack claims he didn't and acts offended that Ace would ask him that question. Jack tells Ace if he had gone back there would be a ton of things he would do different. He says he spent his entire life watching Ace have all these dreams, but Jack only has that one, and it's the DWL. He confesses that Gully didn't want to give Ace a home. He wanted to kill the DWL, and that he drenches the shows with blood, but it's not real blood. He is going to drench it with the brother kind of blood. Okay, so we got to go back to Ace's 30 for 30 reference about Ric Flair. It was a full autobiography special, The Nature Boy Ric Flair, aired on ESPN in 2017. On the 95-minute special, they brought up his plane crash in 1975, how he almost quit wrestling before he started, his many times with women and the number 10,000, and Flair's partying exploits pretty much always came with drinking the nights away. He tells a story of a session with a sports psychologist. The psychologist then asked him how many drinks he has daily. Flair says 10 beers and 5 mixed drinks. He has apparently been doing that each day for almost 20 years. So here, Ace thinks he can do that same and not have anything happen to him the next day. The next scene, Nozomi eyes Gully's wounds. He scolds his crew for not getting to Jack, but they were under the impression that it was a promo. Paul suggests taking them on in Duffy, but Rooster advises against it. To get back at Jack, they have to beat him at his own game. Rooster tells Gully that Jack controls everything the crowd thinks and feels. He's who's good, who's bad, who wins, who loses. Ain't nobody got power but him. He does the same thing to his wrestlers, especially Ace. The only reason he got Ace is that he promised him what he wanted to hear, specifically that he would get to be face again. Rooster is certain that after tonight, Jack is already promising Ace the same thing. Given that Jack just kicked Gully's ass in their own ring, Rooster advises Gully to do the same to Jack during the main event at the fair. Gully smirks and tells Rooster that he liked how he summed that up at the end. Even when Rooster knew Gully promised Ace that championship belt that he's carrying, he isn't running back to Jack. Instead, he grabbed the belt and said this was a conversation for another day, meaning he's willing to stay loyal to Gully under the assumption that he got a title out of it. And if he loses it, at least Gully gave him that opportunity. He'd rather be famous elsewhere than to work his way to the top slowly. Jack drops Ace off, and Ace thanks him for coming to pick him up. But he's not looking forward to hearing how pissed off their mother will be for leaving their car in Jacksonville. Jack tells Ace their mom would be more pissed off if he left Ace in Jacksonville. They even begin to joke about how Jack punched Gully. Jack says he never stepped in a punch like that in his entire life. Ace laughs, but before he wakes the whole neighborhood, Jack calms him down, starts the car, and drives off. Jack returns home where Stacy is nowhere to be found. He finds a note on the counter that reveals she and Thomas are staying at Courtney's for the time being after learning that he arranged for Ace to be pelted with Kleenex. Jack grabs a beer from the fridge and drinks it. like nothing.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Dawn.
And if you've ever watched a TV show and thought to yourself, oh my god, that season finale plot twist was absolutely bonkers.
Or seen a movie and thought, wow, I need to talk to somebody about this train wreck immediately.
Then we think you'll fit right in with our podcast, I Hate It, Let's Watch It. We watch TV shows like Riverdale and Emily in Paris.
And movies like Deep Water, Killer Sofa, Rubber, and Deadly Illusions. And we give them the total rinsing they deserve.
It's basically group therapy for movie masochists. So come check us out wherever you stream podcasts.
The next morning, Crystal's approached by one of her neighbors, Morgan, who is played by Augusta Morano. She tells Crystal she is looking forward to seeing her in the state fair and hopes she is in the main event. But Crystal informs her that she quit despite being fired. Morgan is distraught by this. Oh no. Like, literally brokenhearted. Crystal tells Morgan she has better things to do. Morgan informs Crystal that a lot of people like rooting for her and wishes her luck with anything that she has going on now. Crystal leaves, but the camera focuses on Morgan for a little bit as she's saying, what a shame that Crystal is no longer part of the DWL. The next scene, Apocalypse and Diego prepare the recap for the fair. However, they are interrupted by Devi, who missed the memo and the sticky note on the door that they were recording for the podcast, and who informed them to practice this in an hour. Bobby Pin then enters with the viral video of Jack beating up Gully in a FWD ring. Wild Bill shows up at Crystal's to help get her back into the DWL. He asks her to play the role of Bonnie Bombshell, his valet, but she initially turns him down. Wild Bill pushes further, explaining that everyone at the fair will lose their minds when they see Crystal as the new Bunny Bee. Crystal tells Wild Bill she's not interested. He then tries to convince her by telling her, my dear, for what task were you created to wallow in obscurity, unappreciated and unseen? You want to be seen. You cannot rely on others who want to focus on them. Everybody at that stupid fair will lose their shit, and voila, she's back climbing the ladder. Crystal doesn't think Jack will go for it, but Wild Bill tells her to leave that up to him. He thinks he's Jack's star attraction and the reason the show sold out. Plus, Jack has bigger fish to fry, like the whole Jacksonville shit that just happened. He tells Crystal to promise him he won't scramble Ace's eggs before the show. Crystal questions Wild Bill's motives to helping her. Wild Bill asks her why does it matter. All he wants to know is if she wants to be his valet, yes or no question. Yes, she does. Okay, good. Or no, she wants to be a loser for the rest of her life. It's not complicated, and Crystal has his number. He walks away muttering to himself, saying, yes, I do, Bill. I want to succeed. No, thanks. I want to live in this shithole for the rest of my life. Crystal rolls her eyes and walks into her mobile home. On the other part of town, Ace tells Big Jim about the script and how Jack has risen for him to win the title and turn face. Ace finally takes some accountability and admits that he's not entirely Jack's fault, that the fans boo him, as he hasn't always been the most gracious guy around town, which is why he and Big Jim are at the Quick's corner store. Ace heads inside and apologizes to Helen, the girl that he told off in episode 1. Apologizes for the cruel things he said about her during their last encounter. He invites her to the state fair for the wrestling show. Helen tells him that they sold out, but he has extra tickets. She would love it. He tells her he is going to try to get her extra tickets for her, gives her 10 for the 2 Cokes that Jim got in his hands, and walks out of the store without the change. After leaving the store, Ace thanks Jim for helping him pick up the car in Jacksonville. He tries to convince Jim to come out of retirement, if only for the fair, but Jim says he's still done with wrestling. He's still retired. The next scene is a montage with The Outcast by the Five Americans playing in the background. Crystal considers Wild Bill's offer. She even looks up previous iterations of Bunny Bombshells. Meanwhile, Jack, Ace, and Wild Bill are rehearsing their main event match with the ending being that Ace grabbed the belt from the ladder while the rest of the boys look on and clap, including Ricky Rabies, played once again by CM Punk, who has joined up for the fair. Next scene, Stacy settles in with Courtney contemplating what she's going to do with her life. Courtney welcomes her to stay as long as she wants. Stacy is admittedly sad and worried that she doesn't know how to get her life back on track, and she isn't sure if talking is going to make anything better. Courtney then reveals that Kate and Whitney will be coming to see Stacy perform at the rodeo, hoping it would cheer Stacy up. Jack calls Courtney after Stacy refuses to answer his calls. He asks Courtney to simply tell Stacy that he loves her. The next day, Stacy finally responds and agrees to speak with Jack in person. Diego finds Wild Bill in an ice bath. Diego has been supplying him with steroids. Bill needs something a bit stronger this time, but Diego explains that he's not a dealer. He helped Bill out at first because he wanted him to be in shape for the fair, but the next tier drugs that he's asking for come with some baggage like respiratory problems, but Bill wants it nonetheless. The next scene, Ace reveals to Carol that he's winning the DWL belt at the fair, and Jack's turning him face again. He offers his mom a seat front row, but she doesn't like crowds or fairs, and she especially dislikes wrestling, as most of her life she's been hearing that it's fake. Only though it was only the real thing to Tom, which only ended with his death. Carol tells Ace to have fun though. Ace walks off distraught about his mom believing in this. He walks out to the front porch and looks down at the spot where he found his dad. Next scene, Jack pulls up to Courtney's to talk with Stacy and apologizes about not telling her about the Kleenex. She calls his actions deceptive and unkind, like screwing Ace out of his big shot, buying the Kleenex to provoke the crowd and beating up Gully. Not only were his actions cruel, they were manipulative, especially towards Ace. Speaking of Ace, Jack reveals how his brother insulted Helen Cooper and said that Jack would stay in Duffy just long enough to kill himself like their father. Jack insists that everything he has done was for Ace's own good, to protect him and prevent people from seeing him a certain way, as under it all, he's a good guy. Jack thought maybe he could help Ace just before he charges out into the world as a kid who's so frail that he cries when he's booed and snaps his friend's leg when his heart broke. Jack thought he'd let Ace grow up a little bit first, and that if he was going to make mistakes, he could make them in front of Jack instead of the entire world. He explains to Stacy that their dad gifted them with a mean streak, but it's dumb and it's stupid, but he has someone right in front of him who grounds him in conversations like this. Ace has no one, which is why Jack has to fill the position of being his brother's keeper. Stacy tells Jack that the true story of who he and Ace could become can't start without honesty, but Jack fears he'll lose Ace if he tells him about the Kleenex. Stacy adds that the reason she isn't home right now is because Jack thinks the success of the WO is more important than him being a good guy, which she's not attracted to. She's never felt more far away from him and fears that he will lose her if he doesn't get himself together. Jack asks if she's ready to come home, but she's going to stay at Courtney's until after the fair, which she won't be able to attend as they change the time of her performing the national anthem. He wishes her luck on her performance and she tells him to go make the fair great, maybe write a story where he turns face, because a face is who she married, and also talk to Ace, and only then they can have a talk about what their future looks like. Jack agrees and then heads inside to say goodnight to Thomas.
What is up? This is Fuck It Let's Talk with your host, Christine. Monthly, I'll be here to discuss the ups and woes of parenting and explore topics with other parents, or not parents, in hopes of finding a little sanity. Just a warning, the keyword here is puke. Eventually you'll get it. So come join me where we explore honest takes on parenting and life. Don't forget to follow on Spotify or subscribe wherever else the podcast is available. Be sure to check out the polls on Anchor, where you can also show some support if it tickles your fancy. And if you want more, head on over to the newsletter, F It Let's Talk on WordPress. I look forward to chatting with you. Fuck it. Let's talk.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
All right, the next day, Willie prepares for the fair, giving a hug to Robin and to have fun at the sleepover. Think first, and if Brenda brings vodka and she feels pressure to try some, pretend to take a sip and then throw it out. Don't gossip about other girls that aren't there. That's not nice. And if she is, and if they gossip about boys, she believes every word. Robin asks for a family hug and hugs both Ted and Robin on her way out. Ace returns to the corner store with tickets to the fair, apologizing to Helen once more. Crystal returns to DWL as Wild Bill's valet, greeting Apocalypse, Diego, and Ricky. Jack arrives, who is hesitant about her return until Ace insists that he's great with Crystal partnering with Wild Bill, and so Jack welcomes her back to the DWL. Big Jim returns not long after, and the guys welcome him back. The next scene is of the town of Duffy driving their trucks with the DWL flags hanging out of the side. Y'all heard of football towns where they celebrate high school, college, and pro football. Duffy is a wrestling town. They got their wrestling pride flags out for the state fair, and people are out there driving. All the meanwhile, Jack is giving a speech during a montage of the town of Duffy transitioning into the state fair. He says, quote, "Before we go out there tonight, I just want to say something. This is a family business. That's what my dad told me when I first started coming to the dome. I was just a little guy." The shot transitions to the boys walking to the arena of 10,000 seats, and in the middle of that arena is a square circle where they will be wrestling in. Big Jim says he should have stayed retired. Ricky tells him not to worry, brother. He'll take good care of him out there. Pac tells Diego this is his grandfather's state fair. Diego tells Pac his grandfather never been to a state fair. They laugh, the lights go out, and it's focused in the middle of the ring. Jack continues his monologue while everyone looks at how beautiful the ring is. I asked what that meant since he started the DWL. He didn't inherit it. He said family isn't something you inherit, it's something you make. Another transition of the crowd taking up all the seats and Helen with her date coming down to sit down in her row. Jack continues, yeah, there's some love involved. Truth is, you make family by working hard, fighting side by side. Transition into the backstage locker room. All the wrestlers have shown up in the WL earlier in the episodes. All the wrestlers that have shown up in the WL early in the past episodes are there for this moment. Jack says, love is shown by how you show up, how you continue to show up, and how you never ever fucking give up on each other. Transition to Eddie Earl sitting in the crowd at the state fair along with the committee who are amazed that they pulled us off with the DWL. Transitions back to backstage to Jack giving his crew more of his speech. When we're all out there, when all of us are pulling together, working together, I'm transcended. It's the thrill that I get. I only get it from this. It's a curse. But this family business right here, we're about to make a big fucking leap. The camera pans around the locker room at every wrestler, including Crystal and Willie, who are preparing. Right out there, that's as real as it gets. It's as real as the year you put in and the doubts you overcame and the injuries that you taped up or just sucked up. It's as real as all the friendships in here, old and new. It's as real as all the mistakes that you made and all the hatchets that you buried. Most of all, I just want to thank all of you for never giving up on me. You're my family. That's it. Some by blood, Ace smirks, and rest by sweat. Big Jim, Crystal, and Willie smile. So let's fucking do it. Pac gets up and they all huddle up. Family on three. 1, 2, 3. Family. The first match of the night is Apocalypse and Diego versus Big Jim and Ricky in a tag team match. Backstage, Wild Bill takes the first tier drugs he scored from Diego and instantly begins to feel the effects. Elsewhere, Crystal thanks Willie for helping her out. Willie is only sorry it isn't wrestling. She once said that Crystal didn't belong in the DWL, but now realizes that she was wrong. Big Jim and Ricky Rabies pull out the win over Apocalypse and Diego. Across town, Annie introduces Stacy to Mickey Holloway, who she thanks for inviting her to perform. She heads out into the pit and starts to sing the national anthem in front of the entire rodeo. Willie finds Jack out in the halls trying to find a live stream of the rodeo to watch Stacy perform the national anthem, but Willie tells Jack it's time. He walks with Willie to the backstage area. Ace congratulates Jack for making the state fair and something their dad would be proud of. Jack still is uneasy and tells Ace he has to talk to him about something, which is Kleenex Gate. But Wild Bill interrupts and makes his way out to the ring with Crystal in towel as Bunny Bombshell. It's a slow-mo montage of them headed out to greet the fans with Run Through the Jungle by Creedence Clearwater Revival blaring over the speakers. Crystal hands Bill a microphone and begins his promo with,
Well, 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 well. Welcome to the South Georgia State Fair. I love the State Fair. Loved coming here when I was a kid. Carnival rides, cotton candy, the pie eating contest. I learned a lot about how to eat pie at the State Fair. Just ask Bunny Bombshell.
Did Jack write this?
Yes.
The pie eating thing?
No.
Oh, don't worry, y'all, moms, dads. I'm gonna keep it clean. But I will tell the truth. Truth about where we are as Georgians, where we are as Americans. And the truth is, I am in this ring because I am tired. I'm tired of the complaining and the whining. I'm tired of the sense of entitlement that has poisoned this country. I am in this ring because I am tired of the Spade brothers. I am tired of their sense of entitlement over that DWL title belt. And I'm gonna take it, and I'm gonna feast on it like a fresh-baked Georgia peach pie. Piece by piece, bite by bite, all in one sitting. Let the night
he stomps on the ring a few times and drops the mic. Backstage, Willie claimed that the fair paid for that mic. The scene fades to back at home with Carol. Despite not particularly liking wrestling, she watches from home on the live stream of the event. Back at the state fair, Jack's theme music hits first and he walks out. Ace is riding the lightning blast over the speakers and runs down to the ring where Jack and Wild Bill await with special guest referee Bobby Penn, the fourth man in this whole match, seeing that Ace was the one that broke Bobby's leg. He gets to be the ref here. The ladder match commences as both Jack and Wild Bill go after Ace. As they double team him, the crowd begins to chant Ace's name. Bill climbs the ladder. Ace knocks him onto the ropes, which causes Bill to crap his pants. He plays dead in hopes of avoiding the embarrassment of the crowd finding out. Bobby tells Jack and also tells Willie backstage that Bill just crapped his pants, which gets a big reaction from the boys in the back, including Ricky Rabies. CM Punk poop joke number 2.
Movies and feelings. Pop, pop. Bring Your Own Popcorn is a podcast that dives into people and the movies who love them. Let us preach to your choir or stoke your ire as we spiral down memory lane with cult classics, Jurassics, and other genres that rhyme with traffic. What we lack in education, we make up for with comedy, compassion, and camaraderie. I'm your host, Mixtape Majesty, inviting you to join me and an assortment of wonderful guests on fine podcast apps everywhere. Bring your own popcorn.
You're listening to Mama Murdered a Podcast. I'm your host, AB. Mama Murdered a Podcast is a podcast where me, the mama, will be killing it on the podcast. We'll be taking a deep dive into things that are hard to talk about and even harder to believe that these things actually happen in the world that we live in. This entire podcast will be a trigger warning. I'll be talking about triggering topics while I dive headfirst into a lot of the cases that I'll be covering. New episodes will be released every week on Wednesdays because nobody likes Mondays and because Fridays are for day drinking and barbecues. Some of the case topics will be murder, of course, serial killers, like Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, missing persons cases, like 5-year-old Summer Wells, who vanished from her own yard in broad daylight in the middle of June in Tennessee in 2021. And especially the ones where it kind of seems like they just vanished into thin air, like Brian Schaefer. He walked into a bar, but he never walked out. He's still never been seen again. I'll also be covering cold cases and lesser-known cases. Join me every Wednesday to talk about all things tragic, murder, and things that happen in the downright ugliest sides of society. If you like what you hear and you want to support the podcast, you can rate me on Spotify. You can also leave a review and rating on Apple Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at murdered_mama. All of these things are free and they only take about a second to do, and it really does help grow the podcast. If you have any case suggestions, please send them my way. You can send them to the email address mamamurderedapodcast@gmail.com.
Jack then goes over to Ace and tells him that he will be taking Wild Bill's place, though the ending remains the same. Unbeknownst to Jack, Gully is in the crowd wearing a hoodie and an eye mask similar to Green Arrow. A nod to Stephen Amell's last TV show as the Arrow on the CW, which we can all watch on Netflix. Gully convinces the crowd to begin cheering for Jack instead of Ace, preventing his face turn. As Jack and Ace battle on the ladder, Gully begins throwing Kleenex, which his goons gave out to the crowd as well. Ace asks Jack if this was his idea. Jack says, "Not this time. It was my idea the first time." In a fit of rage, Ace punches Jack for real and knocks him off the ladder. As the crowd boos, Ace then jumps off the ladder and instead of retrieving the belt, he beats Jack further. As Ace chokes the life out of Jack, Crystal gets in the ring and challenges him. The crowd erupts at this image. Crystal tells Ace, just like outside the bar. He takes one swing at her, she ducks, goes to the ropes, and comes back with a head scissors. Jack gets up and asks Crystal to take care of him, so she suplexes Jack, much to the crowd's amazement. Jack orders Bobby to throw in the ladder. She then climbs the ladder. Wild Bill spots Gully in the crowd racing towards the ring. He is forced to get up and reveal that he crapped his pants in order to prevent Gully from interfering, knocking him to the ground with a clothesline. Crystal then reaches to the top of the ladder and grabs the belt. The crowd erupts. Bobby cheers for her. Backstage, Willie, Debbie, and the rest of the boys cheer for her. Ace looks up to Crystal, happy for her, but still upset with Jack, leaving the ring without so much as a word to him or anybody. The end of the episode is the middle of the ring with Crystal celebrating at the top of the ladder, holding the DWL Championship belt in the air, but Ace making his way towards the stage, and the scene fades to black. And that was the end of the first season. Season 2 just started these past few months, but they were recorded during 2022 around the pandemic, so it was really hard to get them out or to find out if there was ever going to be a season 2 or 3. Um, Initial reaction, let's go back to this episode in particular. The backstory of Tom fighting a young Jack because Ace is his and should never put his hands on him. Flash forward to them in Jacksonville, how Jack thinks nobody should ever touch what's his. Wild Bill said it best that the Spade brothers have a sense of entitlement, especially with Ace's jealousy earlier on in the season with Crystal, and now she's becoming good friends with Bobby. CM Punk's second poop joke. I'm so glad he was okay with both poop jokes being written into the script, which makes it seem like, yes, this does happen in wrestling in real life. People do poop in the ring. The double turn came because Gully forced the crowd to chant Jack's name, something that Stacy wanted, but at the same time, she might have been watching this match also and thought this was a bad image, especially Carol, who saw her two boys fighting for real. Ace wanted to be a face, but unfortunately it's not happening here. And finally, you all saw it all across the board in almost every episode being foreshadowed. Crystal, the valet, winning the DW title belt. She drew herself winning it, and even Willie thought she would make a good draw in the main event when she saw her perform. Initial reaction to that, I didn't see that coming. Neither did anybody else. Alright, so I did mention a few real life double turns in wrestling. The first one is from Dolph Ziggler cashing in on Alberto Del Rio. Monday Night Raw, April 8, 2013. Del Rio, the face, just finished defending the World Heavyweight Championship against Jack Swagger, but he got a bit injured during the match. That doctor had to check in on his leg. Unfortunately for Del Rio, Dolph music hits and he comes out with the Money in the Bank contract, along with AJ Lee and Big E next to him. The crowd erupted and cheered him on when he won the championship and turned on Del Rio at the same time. Another double turn is one of my favorites. March 23rd, 1997 at WrestleMania 13 in front of 18,197 people at the Rosemont in Illinois. Bret the Hitman Hart, the face, was taking on Stone Cold Steve Austin in a submission match with UFC fighter at the time, Ken Shamrock, as the special guest referee. Hart busted Austin open with an Irish whip into the steel barricade, and Austin's head began to bleed profusely. Hart tried to use a steel chair on Austin's leg, but Austin choked Hart with a television cable. Hart hit Austin in the head with the ring bell. He applied a sharpshooter on Austin, who did not submit and tried to resist, but passed out from the pain and loss of blood. Shamrock awarded the match to Hart, but Hart continued to attack. Shamrock awarded the match to Hart, but Hart continued to attack Austin, which led to a double turn as the fans turned on Hart and began cheering for Austin. Shamrock pulled Hart off of Austin and executed a waistlock takedown and physically challenged him to a fight. Hart declined to fight Shamrock and left the ring to a chorus of boos. Austin, meanwhile, after regaining consciousness, hit a stunner on the referee when he tried to help Austin out, then slowly limped away to backstage while the crowd chanted his name. And that is all. That's it. That's Heels. That's the entire season. Season 1, Episode 8. Hope you all enjoyed it. As always, follow us on our social support us from Under the Apron on Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube. The threads, apron_stories on the Twitter. More info on the links on where you can listen or watch in any of the show notes. Listen to us on Apple, Spotify, or any other media you can listen to podcasts on. Make sure to rate us and leave us a review. And if you want a little bit more, go to patreon.com patreon.com/From Under the Apron Podcast. Support us on the Patreon. Become a top tier patron and get Patreon privileges. And I will shout you out at the end of every episode. Like Babel B, Menace Smiling, Chanel from the Nurse in Texas podcast, one of my podcast colleagues. Straight up love all our episodes. You should check that out. Cloudy November from the Nose Ascendant podcast. I'll have those two podcast links in the show notes so you all can check them out. Love them. Dark Fate Creations, darkfatecreations.com. Check out your candles. Lovely candles. Amazing candles. You'll love them. Blackheart Beauty, OMG's Ren. Hannah Time, Messenger of Stupidity. Rabbit, Collector of All Things Sentimental. Turtle Boy Florist, Celestial Moon Goddess, Toasted Bagel, Swifty Ever After, Lust for Life. Hey Big Boy, Lisa's Journey. Monir's Ruin, Lily Linguini, the Mufia Gang. Ivan Campo Music. Check out Ivan Campo music. I'll have it in the show notes. Marijuana Barbie, Sidra, Qui-Gon Poe. I love that guy. I'm about to tell him that I watched all 8 episodes of Ahsoka. How do you say her name? Ahsoka. Mighty Sovereign, Sula, H Shadow 666, Dizzy, Dissolved Existence 11, Lindsay Yay 87, Ashton 0822, who we just spoke. Hey Mom, Life Slayer Sounds, Grace in Outer Space, Puppy and Scoob, Beep Boop Bop 0009, CJ, Dahlia's Drawers, Dahlia, Sad Riot Boy, Queen of the Underworld, Just Another Dude, Jodete Sucia Perra, Wow Stark, Roman J, Mariah Jace, Seriously? Get over here. That's one of the names. Seriously, get over here. Hippie Forever 93, Doll Baby Freaky Doo, and Wizziest Soup. Check out Wizziest Soup podcast as well. You will not regret it. Thank you guys for supporting this podcast. Patreon.com/From Under the Apron Podcast. Get your name shouted out. Support the podcast. Check out the show notes for links to other podcast stories that you heard in this episode. Send us a message of your favorite wrestling stories, questions, comments, ratings, or requests at our email. It is from undertheapron@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, joining the live, staying the gift, and being a huge part of this story. Tell your friends. Join us next time for more stories, movies, and TV show reviews, as well as wrestling-related stories when we come to you from Under the Apron. At least I didn't poop on this episode.